and principles. Well, let's get stuck straight into that and much else besides. There's been a number of developments in politics over the weekend, so here is my panel to give us some great insights as we look to the week ahead. Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and former Victoria Liberal Party President Michael Kroger join me now. Great to see you both. How are you both?
Nice to see you, Rowan.
Good to see you, mate.
Hey, Michael.
Excellent. Now, Holly, just before we get into it, I hear you, before we talk about women in the Liberal Party...
I mean, I am one of those women you were just talking about.
This is so funny, Michael. You're going to love this. Holly last week basically labelled the teachers of this nation as a bunch of Marxists. That led to some very, very upset lefties and some very upset Marxists. But anyway, but the good folk at the ABC who have unlimited budgets thanks to the billions of dollars that the Liberal Party has given them, they decided to make a little film about Holly. Let's have a quick look. This was on Insiders. I don't know why people are watching Insiders when they could have been watching Outsiders. But anyway, this was on Insiders yesterday.
We've got an education system that's basically run by Marxists. And so when kids are at school and they're being taught all this absolute left-wing rubbish, that's where they're leaving school and that's where they're landing. And they just don't have any comprehension of the impact of what they want to talk about.
That poster charts everyone's performance. We get stars when we master the material covered in class.
I think the left wing is across a lot of what we see through the school system nowadays. We know that it's all John Keynes, if not Marxism.
Who?
We're seeing as an almost woke agenda being put onto all sorts of curriculum now.
What about math?
We're not interested in experimental education here.
Now, Michael, Holly, we'll get to you in a second. Great starring role there, special effects. Michael, you were on the ABC board. Did you know they had billions of dollars to do those sort of not cheap special effects and computer graphics to make Holly a star?
No, they need more money. That's what we hear every year. But look, Holly, I think that was tremendous. I think you're a bit of a rock star, having seen that. But apropos of your comment about Marx, I happen to be reading Douglas Murray's latest book, The War on the West, which, if you haven't read it, is a brilliant, an absolute tour de force. It's a magnificent piece of writing and very frightening at the same time. But I didn't realise, Rowan and Holly, that Karl Marx, pardon my ignorance, but I didn't realise when he goes through Marx's history, Marx was also a racist. He was anti-Semitic. He was pro-slavery. All of the things that are complained about now and that people are cancelled for now, Marx was that and some more.
How fascinating.
So if there are any statues of Marx as there are in London, I think they need to come down quickly, mate, because he was a big supporter of slavery.
Yep.
And we can't have that in the modern era, apart from his economic policies being, garbage.
Well, his economic policies, Michael, create slavery. They create slavery. You only have to look at the Soviet Union and China.
Correct.
No wonder he was a fan.
Correct.
Now, Holly, starring role there, terrific. Now, the Liberal Party has had, the Federal Liberal Party has had some of my very favourite politicians, who also happen to be women, by the way. Amanda Stoker, Nicole Flint, in the Nats, Bridget McKenzie, yourself, of course, Holly. Now we learn from the ones I would call less talented, sorry, hate to say it, members of the Liberal Party now saying we need quotas for women in the Liberal Party. Holly, your thoughts? As a woman in the Liberal Party?
As a woman in the Liberal Party, look, I don't think there's a woman in the Liberal Party who wants to be considered a number, to be making up the numbers, to be a quota girl. We certainly see plenty of them in the Labor Party. I don't think it is something that we should go down the path towards. But I do think there's things that we can look at. The Liberal Party does need to modernise in some ways if it's going to start looking more attractive to women to get involved. Our Women's Council in New South Wales meets at 10 or 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. Corporate women aren't going to attend those sorts of events. We've got a new plebiscite system that lots of people advocate, but to go into some of these conferences, I have 900 pre-selectors. People aren't going to be able to get to know those people if you're also, raising a family, got a serious job. you're just not going to have the time to get in and around if we're thinking of bringing people in from the outside to run for us. But a good thing that I think we could look at is Melissa McIntosh and Susan Ley were actually challenged at the last, amongst others, before the last election. So perhaps we need to have a look at the women that we've got in Parliament and how we can actually support them to stay in Parliament rather than the boys trying to knock them off at every opportunity.
Michael, Margaret Thatcher didn't need a quota. She won 3 elections in a row. Personally, I think the Liberal Party is seriously deluding themselves if they think this is the discussion that people like Linda Reynolds, Maurice Payne and others are suggesting that this is the way forward. I think there are things much closer to home. But your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, no, I've always been opposed to quotas for the reasons that we all know, and then of course where does it stop? So then it doesn't stop at women; it stops at all sorts of other groups, and you then, as Holly absolutely correctly said, you get the thought that, well, have I been pre-selected because I'm a quota person, or have I been pre-selected on merit? That having been said, obviously more women are needed, and we've had some very good women who've lost at the last election, such as Katie Allen and Higgins. But we also do have some forms of quotas in the Liberal Party already. So, at Federal Council we have two female vice presidents. In the Victorian Party we have pre-selection delegates who are equal men and women. So there are forms of quotas already in the party, but as for pre-selection, look, I've tended to vote for women candidates over the years, and I'm very happy with some of the choices I've made. But again, for the reasons explained, and as you correctly say, if people think this is the first order of business, they're sorely wrong. They're sorely wrong. This is a 10th order item when we know what's at stake, which is, as you say, the policies and principles which need to be expounded and elaborated upon more fully. If you go to an election, as we did the last election, with management being your argument for re-election, then you're almost certainly going to get beaten when you're going for a 4th term, as we did, Rowan.
Holly, so there have been suggestions, that Peter Dutton needs to soften his image in order to be potentially Prime Minister. I would have thought the reason he is in the job he is in is because he was so good in defence and as a home minister. I would have thought the last thing he should be doing is softening his image. I would have thought we'd want that strength. We've had all the softies. Let's have someone vaguely conservative for a change, Holly.
Look, Peter's probably his persona, that is actually his personality is probably coming out more now that he's in the opposition leadership roles. So Australians are getting an opportunity to see him more for the person that he is. He certainly had very serious and, portfolios that required that strength. But anyone who knows Peter will tell you how lovely he is, what a great guy he is, how very effective he is, how, he will get on with the job and help out his colleagues whenever he can. So I don't think it's about softening the image, but I think it is about showing Australia sort of who Peter is as opposed to what they would have seen, particularly when it came to things like border security and Defence Force.
Well, Michael, I'm an extremely generous person, and so I want to save the Liberal Party from months and years of agonising over what they need to do to win the next election. So I've got 3 very short slogans: ditch net zero, oppose the voice, destroy identity politics. That's my offering. You can have it for free, or I'll send in a bill, whatever. But what's your recipe for success for the Liberal Party, Michael?
So, first of all, who wants a weak Defence Minister or a weak Immigration Minister or a weak Minister for Home Affairs? It's like having a bank manager that has no limit on loans he's prepared to make anyone that walks in the door. So thank God for Pete and Dutton's strength. But no, the way forward is simply this. Dutton needs to re-announce the core principles of the Liberal Party to remind everybody of what they are. And the best way of doing that is announcing a pandemic response in case there is one again, which is never again will people be stopped from practising their religion under a Liberal government, pandemic or no pandemic. People who want to worship are entitled to worship on Saturday, Sunday, whatever day, and police will never again be arresting people for practising their religion. They'll never be stopped from having weddings or going to funerals. They'll never be stopped from visiting sick loved ones. They'll never be stopped from going home to their state or coming back to this country if they're an Australian resident. because we believe in freedom of religion, freedom of association as the cornerstones of what the Liberal Party stands for. So if Peter makes that announcement first up, that will remind everybody of what a party of true liberty is all about. So that'd be my first bit of advice to him if he asked me, just to remind everybody why we are here. And that's why we are here.
Hear, hear, Michael. I 100% agree with you. And Scott Morrison should have stuck to his guns and put some genuine, beef behind the idea that there was no mandatory vaccinations, which he promised, but then didn't live up to. Holly, you're hitting the airwaves now. You've got a future in Hollywood after this, your Insiders performance. But someone who's trying to steal the limelight is a new Greek-Australian greengrocer called Johnny Kapiris from Adelaide. Here he is. He's gone viral. Have a listen.
While every in Australia and the world is using inflation for an excuse to jack their prices up like heads, you know why? Because they're money hungry, whereas in fact Kapiris land drops his prices.
So, Holly, he's basically saying inflation, he's going to put his prices down and help people.
Yeah.
Have we lost... We seem to be running round and round in circles, Holly, with this idea of wages are going to go up, inflation's going to go up, interest rates are going to go up, and then the government's going to give everyone a cheque. I mean, this is just communism or socialism. Holly, how do we get out of this cycle?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the video that the Insiders did of me and, Marxism sleeping through into the classroom. And a lot of that's via the universities and how they're training teachers and how they're bringing people through. And it's a wrong kind of economics. I don't know whether they even teach economics in the same way anymore, because when you start playing with supply and demand, when you look at what's happening in energy at the moment, everywhere, there just seems to be a complete lack of understanding with what happens with basic economics. When you put more money into the economy, you're going to get people spending more money, which is going to lead to inflation, which is, of course, you're then going to see pressure on interest rates, et cetera, et cetera. And what's going to happen is you're going to see people are going to start to lose their jobs because people aren't going to be able to afford to keep their staff on. With everything that's going on through the supply chain. I mean, there's so many complexities to all of this, but we've got a media who just sits back and lets it run.
Absolutely. Michael Kroger, Holly Hughes, thanks so much for coming on The Bolt this evening, and for the last 3 weeks. It's been great having you both on, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Rowan. No, Michael.
Thank you.